So in just a period of 6 days, Joss Whedon has come from out of nowhere and completely flipped my top 2 favorite films of the year upside down, but in by far the greatest fashion ever imagined. I was one of several thousand extremely lucky participants to attend one of the 10 exclusive fan screenings for the Avengers 3 weeks before its actual release, and I could tell you this was definitely the most anticipated I've ever been going into any screening that I have ever had the chance of attending, and it's especially because I have really dug, for the most part, almost all of the Marvel movies that have built up to this big effects fest. And it's just a quick rundown of my thoughts on all of the previous Marvel movies that have built up to this film's release. I'll list them from most to least favorite right now, and just to let you know, the least ones, which are at the bottom, are a 3.5 and a 3 in their final rating, but the last one is still left to be determined because I haven't given it a second viewing yet, and they are Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Captain America the First Avenger, Iron Man 2, and then Thor. But keep in mind, Thor was my first midnight showing, and I never really gave it that second chance since, so I think might as well do this afterwards anyway. And plus, I would show this guy right here a little bit of respect too. Maybe he'll light up a smile on my shirt too afterwards. So as millions and millions of people know, The Avengers is the movie that has been built up from all the previous Marvel movies that I discussed before, and the basic plot of it centers on which Loki ends up getting through the portal from Asgard to Earth, in which he steals the Tesseract from the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and that's where S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury and his many agents that are left after the attack in which Loki steals the Tesseract, he decides to put ignition into the Avengers Initiative by bringing together all of these great superheroes that you've seen before in one or maybe even several of the previous Marvel movies that there have been, and they all have to team up in order to find the Tesseract and destroy it before Loki and his alien race army, the Chintos, I think that's what it's called. Sorry for being a noob on that name right there in the Marvel Universe, but they all must team up and stop him before the alien invasion commences and the world may be destroyed. One of my biggest fears going into this movie though was the hype, because when you build up to a movie of this epic proportions from all the previous movies that have been made before it in order to help build up to this film's release, that was my biggest fear going into this film, was the hype. Is it all going to live up in the epic grand scale that we have all expected from the trailers alone? And is it all going to pay off in terms of balancing out all the characters and also with humor in between of the action and more? And boy, I have to affirm, even with those fears that I had going in, all of those vanished at some point during this movie. This is without a doubt one of the greatest superhero comic book movies I have ever seen in my life. Without a doubt the best since The Dark Knight. Essentially, this is Marvel's Dark Knight. Every actor in this movie, in which they embodied the characters that I've played before, except for one, which I'll get to in just a bit, all of them do such a great job embellishing within all of those aspects that we have seen in those characters' personality in the past. Whether it's Robert Downey Jr. doing his best Tony Stark yet in this film with all the snarky lines that he has to say throughout, and the great chemistry that he has on screen with nearly every actor that he works alongside with. Whether it's Chris Evans completely embodying the old-fashionedness of Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, and being the patriotic leader that he is. Also moving on to Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson, who do a great job as both Hawkeye and the Black Widow in particular. And also props to Chris Hemsworth for doing an even better job at Thor in the past, even though his character was a bit slightly underused. But he managed to do a great job and also pull off some hair extensions for the character's hair while he was at it too. But without a doubt, the two biggest standouts in this movie are Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki. In my opinion, Ruffalo delivered the best Bruce Banner that I have ever seen, because his performance is so naturally low-key and subtle when he's playing the Bruce Banner character, and the way that all of the ways he delivers his lines throughout the movie flows in such a very natural and realistic manner, and it never felt forced in any way. It all just felt so real because Bruce Banner is such a fragmented character in the Marvel Universe, and Ruffalo just did the best way imaginable in his performance, in which he embodied all those aspects from the very beginning that you see his character. character. Then moving on to Tom Hiddleston as Loki, he does his best performance as the character because I thought he was one of the best aspects in Thor, yet his move for power and his motivation behind it never really fulfilled in full form throughout the film. Yet here it's explained in well depth in the very beginning, and the way they built it up throughout was done with very well execution by writer-director Joss Whedon. And in particular, Loki is a very manipulative and cunning villain. He never really explodes in anger like most villains do in over-the-top fashion today, and he's very subtle in his performance as well when delivering all the character's lines. And he has this very creepy smile that perfectly embodies the cunning and very manipulative personality that his character has throughout the film. But once again, like in The Cabin in the Woods earlier this week, Joss Whedon is the true breakthrough of this film yet again. On board as both writer and director of this movie, I could totally tell of how committed he was in this project from the very beginning, in which he announced it at the Visionaries panel I attended in 2010 at Comic-Con, in which he made the first announcement that he was going to be directing the Avengers, and I could tell from the very beginning from how passionate this man was. He is a lifelong fanboy of the Avengers. He grew up reading the comics when he was young, and who knows, he probably still does today, and especially after this film's success, this is gonna shoot him through mainstream cinema for sure. The way that he writes the movie is so carefully constructed, and it balances out just about every character in the film in an equal fashion in comparison to the others. Sure, there were one or two that were just slightly underused compared to everybody else, but he gave every character their time to shine, and the way he balanced out all of their moments and executed them within his direction was just so well imagined and much more creative and entertaining than I could have ever imagined from the trailer shown before. And just like the way that he has done in his previous projects, he adds on a very smart sense of humor throughout the movie. This was without a doubt the funniest of the Marvel movies that I have seen. The situations of comedic timing that he builds up within his writing, they're not only timed so well by the actors, but it's the lines that he just writes for them that make you laugh out loud at times. Within Whedon's direction too, he does a phenomenal job at just setting up the action sequences at his start, but the way that he shoots them with such a grand scale in terms of cinematography and also within the tight editing as well, it is just mind-blowing from how he just commits on the visual eye candy of destruction that you want to see from when all these people have to fight one another throughout the film. And the way that he ends up building it up as a dysfunctional family essentially is just perfect when you look at the rest of his career, because a lot of the TV shows that he has done before, almost all of them deal with dysfunctional families that they work together when they know they have to do it at the right time, yet they don't get along with each other outside the actual job, which is the best part. The movie never really sets them up as a perfect family from the beginning, and he builds it up in such well-developed fashion to get them to a point where they actually have to work with each other. It just felt so natural and raw. And based off the action sequences, there's hardly any shaky cam. All of them have a great sense within the way that they are shot, and let me tell you, from all the destruction that has this movie, Michael Bay is definitely going to be crying in the corner of shame from how disappointed he would be for the fact that Whedon nailed it down better than any other of his movies before. Overall, the Avengers just delivered on everything that I wanted. Great characters, humor, grand epic action, visual eye candy from start to finish, and there never really being a boring moment throughout the movie. Whedon balances this film out so well in terms of gravitas, great acting, phenomenal action, very well-timed, smart humor throughout, and I cannot imagine anyone else that could have pulled off this film better than him, especially with the actors that worked alongside him, because they are at the peak of their A-game in this movie, and that's why I'm going to give the Avengers 5 stars. There's only maybe one or two minor nitpickets that I have with this movie, and that was that two characters were just slightly underused than others, but the more I thought about it, this movie lived up to the hype in the best way imaginable. But I will warn you all, keep your hype at a certain level, because if you do overhype it in the slightest sense at the level where you're already at, just hold it in and wait, and I'm sure you'll be highly satisfied. So I hope you enjoyed my review of the Avengers. Be sure to comment below whether you're looking forward to the movie. Well, actually that's a pretty dumb question when you come to think of it. But if you've seen the movie too, comment below and tell me what you thought about it, but do not leave anything that could be a spoiler through the film, because those comments will be deleted immediately. So in the meantime, I'm talking CaliCritic Reviews, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.